Welcome to another episode of Up To. 9 years ago, Up To started as a live event series showcasing leaders who are as humble as they are successful. The humility piece is extremely important as we identify leaders who can inspire others. We try to focus our interviews on the non-business aspects of their lives. And in doing so, we have found there's a real thirst to explore their hearts and minds in atypical ways. Our host, as always, is Adam Kaufman. And on this episode, we are joined by Ben duPont. Stick around. We'll be right back.
I'm grateful that Calfee, Halter & Griswold has once again agreed to partner with us. With offices in Ohio and Washington, D.C., this full-service national law firm focuses on all aspects of business and the law, including corporate and finance, intellectual property, and government relations. Let me be clear, I actually approach companies with whom I would like to partner. We just don't accept marketing dollars from anyone. I have been referring my CEO and entrepreneur friends to Calfee for years. I really believe in the firm. One of their notable practice areas is in mergers and acquisitions. And recently, for instance, I introduced a successful entrepreneur in the Midwest to Calfee when he told me that a European-based conglomerate wanted to buy his business. Calfee works with large corporations as well as privately held companies throughout the U.S. and Canada and in Europe and Asia too. So whether it's selling your own business or the more routine needs of creating your first will or anything in between, this firm can really do it all in terms of legal needs. Once again, the firm is Calfee, Halter & Griswold, and you can find them at calfee.com or on the Up To Foundation website. Our guest today grew up with one of the most recognizable last names in American business, but he has spent most of his adult life making his mark beyond the global corporation sharing his last name. He is an entrepreneur, a capital allocator, and a community builder who has quietly become a powerful connector for founders and innovators around the world. Recently, he released a book about a very fascinating process for generating ideas. I've been fortunate to participate in his unique dinners, something we will discuss today. After starting his career inside the family's industrial business, he stepped out on his own to co-found Yet2 back in 1999, long before open innovation was a buzzword. He later launched Yet2 Ventures and today is a co-founder and partner at Chartline Capital Partners, where he helps software companies and all types of tech companies grow by making strategic introductions to customers, partners, and co-investors. His impact extends far beyond cap tables and boardrooms, though. He's poured his energy into the Delaware community through service on several boards, including Longwood Gardens, Zip Code Wilmington, and the Tower Hill School, just to name a few. And I've been there to visit him. He's very involved and very proud of his community. He's also a licensed pilot, a ham radio operator, and an avid sailor, which tells us something about his curiosity, his appetite for risk, and his love of exploration. To add to the intrigue of growing up with a famous last name, his father was the governor of his state. So along with being the great-great-great-grandson of a French immigrant who founded what became a massive company, our guest today was born into a legacy which brought unimaginable opportunity, I'm sure, but also expectations and scrutiny and a unique kind of pressure that most of us will never experience. Today, we're going to talk about how our guest successfully navigated that weighty inheritance, that responsibility actually, and how he's shaped his own identity with true humility, something I've admired as I've known him over the years, and a focus on service to others. Trust me, I know a lot of sons of successful fathers, and I can tell you that our guest today is a rare find. I might even call him a unicorn, to use a word from our shared venture industry, for he hasn't cruised through life in what could have been the comfort of his name. And I saw it firsthand when I, like I said, spent a day with him in his hometown several years ago, witnessing all which he's involved in. I'm thrilled to be reconnecting with him today. Ben duPont, welcome to the Up To podcast.
Thank you very much. Only my mom could have written a nicer intro than that. That was pretty incredible. Thank you very much.
All of it's accurate, though. I never, do small talk or boast beyond appropriateness, and all that's true. I'm very thrilled to have you here today. So tell me, What have you been up to?
I have trouble sleeping. The world is so damn interesting right now. There's so much opportunity, so much less friction between capital and
Hmm.
ideas and markets. I think we're going to enter an extraordinary time in history of economic growth, of prosperity. I am an optimist by nature, but so I spend my time thinking about how the world's going to change, how who the entrepreneurs are that are going to change it, and how I can help them.
So it's almost like you're a bit of a futurist, if not officially, with that optimism and that thinking ahead. So what is intriguing you right now in terms of technology and these entrepreneurs?
Well, it's a good so there's this, you and I are old enough to remember when information became free 25 years ago. A lot of craziness, maybe mostly craziness, but some real businesses emerged from that that we all use every day. The This time information, excuse me, this time knowledge and expertise is becoming free,
Hmm.
and there are some stark similarities and there are some differences, and I'm trying to navigate that. Let me give you a specific example. When information became free 25 years ago, for the most part, outsiders were the winners. They were the ones managing the disruption. Jeff Bezos did not grow up in the book industry. He was a very much an outsider.
That's true.
The founders of Uber were not from logistics and transportation. They were very much an outsider, very much outsiders. Mark Zuckerberg was the definition of an introvert at Harvard.
Hmm.
He was not a book, a Facebook publisher or a
Hmm.
connector of people. He was a massive introvert. You can literally go through the major success stories, and I'm sure there probably is one, but there are none that I can think of that really drove innovation. They were all outsiders. This time, I think, is different. I think the insiders are the ones that are driving change. And in
Hmm.
our case, we're looking for the most. So AI is coming along, and AI expertise and skills are important, but industries and problems are typically have very specific remedies or very specific orders that the dominoes fall when new tech comes along, and very specific kind of rules of engagement. And in my experience, in this case, the insiders are winning. So
Hmm.
the startups with the deepest domain expertise in accounting are the ones that are going to win in accounting. The companies with the deepest domain expertise in the law are going to win. I know, we've got two big players in legal tech right now, Harvey and Legora. They are not founded by insiders. And watch what's up there. I think you're going to see a disruption in this industry as the insiders take hold. So literally, you can. And our thesis is to find the smartest domain experts and then help work with them. So that's maybe one difference between 25 years ago and today. One other difference that we're noticing today, and there were some similarities. Maybe this is a subtle similarity with last time. Is I think the companies that are winning are the ones that are paid to analyze proprietary data. They get smarter on that data. They then get more proprietary data, and they get smarter, and that becomes essentially a significant moat. If you're paid to analyze proprietary data, lean into that in a big way.
Hmm.
So those are so what am I doing? Those are two examples of the kinds of problems I'm trying to wrestle with.
I like that you mentioned legal tech as one of the first couple of, you mentioned accounting as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Full disclosure, our fund invested in a company called Everlaw more than 10 years ago.
There you
And
go. There
they
you
don't
go.
compete with Harvey, but they are more like, I think 49 of the 50 state attorney generals offices use their
Yes. Yes.
research tools. And it's, they've been unicorn status for years,
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
privately held, but you and I offline were talking about
Yeah.
the possibility of like a one person, not Everlaw, but like a one person unicorn developing, probably
Yes.
not too far out in the future. A small staff, if not one person, creating a
Right.
billion-dollar business thanks to technology and this lack of friction you're talking about.
I think it's absolutely going to happen, and it it actually kind of makes sense. I mean, um, if you're founded around an idea and thesis, why not find the best and brightest to help you solve each particular problem? HR and accounting and
Hmm.
communications and marketing
Each
and
AI
and
tool, right?
and AI tools, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, yeah, super interesting time. I have trouble sleeping. It's so exciting.
Oh my gosh. Well, how do you make big decisions? I'm always interested in successful folks like you who are stimulated by so many different opportunities that I'm sure are coming your way. How do you decide like what to jump into, what to learn more about, or to maybe quickly pass on? Like, is it all gut, or do you have some kind of like
Yeah.
process you go through?
So in our firm, we have a very specific process
Of
we go
course.
through.
Yeah. But how
We
about you?
look at
Even before like firm level, like
yeah.
taking a
So
meeting or having breakfast with somebody or uh,
it's a good question. I try to be much more disciplined with my time. I think if I
hmm
was failing over the past decade or the past few years, that's where it was. You got to be selective. As we talked about, I read a lot of biographies, and I love the Walter Isaacson one on Elon Musk, who
hmm
doesn't have a scheduling assistant and just doesn't take meetings.
yeah,
And
think of that
now
discipline.
he's successful enough that meetings come to him and conversations come to him. I have a nearly full-time scheduling assistant just to help me manage and cultivate. And so the one thing we don't have more of is time. And so to be
Right.
really, really judicious.
hmm
But it's hard when your kid's childhood best friend calls you and wants career advice. How do you say no to that?
Right. Right.
When your college roommate calls you because there's a challenge that he thinks you can help with, how do you say no to that? So
Yeah,
you
we're
do
around
get
the
stuck.
same age. Yeah, that happened. Like right now, it's exactly right. Our friends' kids want career help,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
our friends or our friends' parents need health help. So those are
yeah, yeah,
two very common inbounds for me.
yeah,
Of course, I'm not complaining. I enjoy that type of
yeah.
help, but it does take a lot of time.
It takes a lot of time. So I think there's another. So on top of it, there is something that frees up time, and I think, and I don't know what the right answer with these AI tools are, other than that we should all be experimenting. I think
Mm,
that's the learning is. And if you think, spend a lot of time thinking about education, and there are some core things I think students need to learn in grade school and high school. But maybe the mix is subtly changing a little bit because these new tools are going to, when you're talking with a 10th grader today, they're going to grow up into a very different world, Adam, than the one you and I live in.
for
And
sure.
and I think this concept of just-in-time learning and just-in-time information is a big deal. Um, if you think about what are the important skills to flourish in life, I think curiosity is important. I think grit and tenacity is important, but maybe knowledge. I think a broad-based knowledge is maybe more important than it used to be, but
Mm-hmm.
domain-specific knowledge maybe less.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of debate now if even the original four-year college model is as important as it once was. I think the jury is still out on that big question, but it's even being asked. So
Yes.
I think that's healthy because, like our youngest just graduated from Ohio State University a
Yeah.
couple weeks ago, and even he's not digitally native. He still
Yes.
does some analog things, but like the
Yeah.
next 4 years, everyone will be digitally native.
Yes, and I have these. I've been hosting these wonderful non-obvious dinners around the country, and mostly because some things I've learned is great ideas don't frequently come from the senior people, and one way to get to get access to a broad swath of new ideas
Hmm.
is to
Hmm.
is to get a room full of people that aren't just diverse in how they look, but diverse in how they think. And but I had a senior researcher at Google a decade ago in a non-obvious dinner say, if you think about education, it's really three things. It's credentials. We all know what a PhD from MIT means. That's a credential. There's a social sports aspect of this, and then there's a learning aspect of it. But the point she was making was that learning can be done. And if you go to Brandeis University, why are you just subject to the professors at Brandeis? Maybe there's a better professor somewhere else that you should have maybe digital access to. So I
Mm.
think that is going to come along, and I think you're going to see more curiosity-based learning, which I think is an
Mm-hmm.
interesting concept. But her
Mm-hmm.
view was that schools are going to become essentially country clubs with online learning, and
I would say that currently some of them are already. If you drive around
they
any of
might
these
be.
campuses and the East
They
Asian
might be.
Ferraris
Yeah.
rolling around,
Yes.
and yeah,
Yes.
and the
Exactly.
6-year students who don't want to leave, it's
Exactly.
pretty cush. But
It is.
no, I think it's a great topic. And you said you spend a lot of time thinking about education. What aspect of that are you involved in?
Well, we founded a wonderful software school in Delaware called Zip Code Wilmington, and it's really now a coding school and AI school. I do not think this massive job apocalypse is going to come that everybody's predicting.
Yeah, me neither.
I don't. I think what's going to happen is just companies are going to get a lot more efficient and people are going to get a lot more efficient. But I don't think there's going to be large scale layoffs, or for that matter, large scale. I think you're going to find that these AI agents need people.
Hmm.
That they can't truly run autonomously. So there's a great software AI school here in Delaware called Zip Code Wilmington. We've closing in on having 800 graduates. We draw from really across the country. We've had a few international applicants, but certainly across the country. And and I'm interested in, so this is a 90-day boot camp, and I like this concept. I think you're going to see other kinds of 90-day boot camps, super intense learning. The school is experimenting with some things in healthcare. If you think about hospitals, they are doctors are big. Hospitals are a lot of doctors, a lot of nurses. Forget the administrators for a moment. By the way, that's the area I think you're going to see. Maybe the mix will decrease, but there's a third act, which is a hospital, a person, which is kind of an employee, which is kind of a technician, and I think you're going to see these 90-day boot camps emerge across other aspects of learning.
I think that one of the most interesting aspects of your story was when I visited you in Wilmington and I saw how passionate you are about your hometown. What made you stay in Wilmington for the long haul? You could have lived anywhere. Somebody in your scenario could be living in Palm Beach or Beverly Hills or the south of France. And I'm not even just talking about wealth, but your like exposure to different opportunities. And what made you choose to stay in your hometown?
Well, it's funny. I mean, I think as people go through a life cycle, they grow up in their hometowns. They probably start out hating their hometowns, no matter where they are, and go, I want to get the hell out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's maybe a good thing. You should go off and live in other places. And I was lucky enough to have an employer that sent me. I mean, I spent a few years working at a nylon plant in Elgin, South Carolina. If you've been there, you were lost. But there was a few thousand people worked at the plant.
Mm-hmm.
It was an opportunity of a lifetime. I then went to Detroit, moved to Detroit. I've lived in Boston for a while and other places. So and then I think people tend to come back to their homes. Maybe it's not as bad often as they think, and maybe there's, it's a little bit like the Mark Twain quote. I'm not sure you heard it, which is Mark Twain says, "I'm amazed at what my father learned from the time I was 16 to the time I was 21."
Yeah,
So,
he changed, not you, right?
he changed,
Exactly.
not you. And
Yeah.
so Delaware does have some built-in advantages that are big. We are right on the Amtrak corridor. We are 90 minutes from New York City, 70 minutes from Washington, D.C., and Philadelphia and Baltimore are even closer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
pretty rare that I can have a breakfast meeting in 4 cities. That's a big
Wow.
deal.
Yeah.
It's also a very low tax state. The tax burden is one of the lowest in the country, in large part because everybody incorporates here, and we hope
Mm-hmm.
that continues. I know
Yeah.
Elon Musk was a little frustrated
Talk
with
about
it for a while.
friction. Yeah, like that's changing a little bit too with Texas and some other South Dakota,
It
some
is.
other
It
states. Yeah.
is. It is.
Probably one of your main industries. People don't realize that's an industry, but that
It
is
is
an
the main
industry.
industry. It is
Yeah.
nearly a third of Delaware's state budget
Oh, I didn't realize
comes
that.
from the corporation fees everybody
Wow.
pays. It is a big deal in Delaware, and they
Mm-hmm.
take it very seriously. This is
Mm-hmm.
not a partisan issue. The state is aligned by this. Now Delaware still has a lot of advantages. Many states elect judges. Many states have jury trials on business cases. Neither of these, I think, are terribly productive. If Elon Musk thinks he would have gotten a better deal with a jury trial or with an elected judge, I'm not sure that's the case. And so, anyway, but like a lot of things, it's not just the law in Delaware and the historical precedent. It's the infrastructure that the state has built. And that really matters. And we still, to this day, about 65% of all companies are incorporated in Delaware, and a much larger percentage of new corporations. Occasionally, we get high-profile companies that leave, but they'll leave until there's an actual a trial, and I think that you may see some of them come back.
Well, I know that we've invested in 155 pre-seed or seed startups since 2014, and almost all of them are Delaware companies. So you still have virtually a monopoly on that. But I tend to think that you didn't move to Delaware for those reasons. You probably came back for like family reasons or,
I came back
friend
for family
reasons, because you left the DuPont company which took you to South Carolina and I think Detroit. I'm not sure. But then even though you left that company that's from Wilmington, you still came back to your hometown, which I find that fascinating and one of the things that I find interesting about you, and I think it's wonderful.
Small towns have had a rough go, particularly these, and some people call them maybe Rust Belt companies, Belt sections of the economy. There is a recipe to bring them back. Some cities have really embraced that. Pittsburgh is a great example of a city that has come back and is roaring. Detroit is come back and is roaring. I think you're going to see, Delaware hasn't been quite on, Wilmington hasn't been quite on that trajectory, but I think has got a shot at it. And, with that and the digital landscape, I can
work.
I mean, how you can work. My firm is a team of 6, but we're all spread up and down the East Coast. We got one person in Chicago, and we talk with them daily, and more than that, we have. I think you can live, kind of anywhere right now. And
I know you can. I choose to live in Cleveland. I'm not from there, but my wife and I really liked raising family there. And just
Cleveland's a great example.
3 days ago in the Wall Street Journal, there was an article about Akron, Ohio, a Cleveland suburb, turning an old Goodrich plant, a company not unlike DuPont, into a startup garage now. And it's now like got 50 entrepreneurs in there trying to build businesses, tech companies. So if that can happen in a place like Akron, Ohio, once the rubber capital of the world, what you're talking about could happen almost anywhere.
Oh yeah, I was in. My wife likes to take one trip a year to a new part of the world. It's I don't know what the right word is. It's half education and half fun. And we were in Sri Lanka, which is an interesting island off the coast of India and about the size of Ireland. And in the main city in Sri Lanka, in Colombo, we walked around the downtown, and I'll be damned if there's not a startup incubator in Sri Lanka with 100 startups in it. And it could have fit in New York City. I mean, these kids were running, bustling about, starting to do things and change the world and make it. I mean, it gives you faith in humanity when you see this.
Right. Well, I remember one time, speaking of, startup hubs, I was having coffee in Palo Alto, and unplanned, I see you walking down the street with a colleague of yours. I still go to Silicon Valley, a good bit. To me, one of the most stimulating towns to visit in terms of entrepreneurship and new ideas and collaboration. Your whole life is around ideas and creativity and collaboration. Can you talk a little bit about your non-obvious idea dinners and that whole platform? I read the book. I've participated in your dinners. It's something everyone should participate in if they can.
Yeah, they should create your own. And I think so we put a particular structure together, but this is a public domain idea, and it should be. I encourage it to be stolen.
Open source.
Open source, exactly. I mean, if you think at a high level, the mechanics of starting something today, you name your thing, incorporating a company, putting a marketing plan together, writing code. The friction is going out of these things. So maybe the front end of the funnel, the ideation part, maybe we should be a little more disciplined about that. And that's what the idea behind these dinners was about, really. The interesting thing about a dinner is when people sit down at a dinner table and they're eating, they're a little more open and
For
a little
sure.
more
Than a meeting, right?
Yeah, if you're around a conference table, you're worried about being wrong sometimes, and
Right, your boss is in the room, right?
Right. But dinner, and I don't think it's just the alcohol. A glass of wine will do, free it up. But I think it's a more productive.
No, I totally agree with you. The salon concept almost, and I'm Lebanese, and we really bond with people over eating, not just drinking, but eating and serving others, and coming into my more private environment of a home. So, tell me if this is a quick, accurate summary of the dinners. I tell people it's like a dinner meeting, a dinner party, but at the table, everyone has a couple minutes to pitch their idea, whether it's an invention or a policy idea or some other technology, and you're like king of the world or you're God for the moment, and your idea is going to become the reality. And then each table votes on their best idea, and then each table winner presents to the whole room, and then there's like a so-called winner at the end of the night. Is that an accurate, quick summary?
Yeah, that's an accurate, quick summary. We do transcribe the whole thing, and some of the best ideas, interestingly, don't win their table. And we always try to go through it and look at that pattern. But sometimes the ideas that are the most interesting are people would at the time consider outlandish. I mean, we had a dinner where a young man stood up, did not win his table. This is 15 years ago, and said the United States is going to be a net exporter of energy. And we all laughed. Literally, the room was like, that cannot possibly happen. And he said, well, let me give you an example. That's the first time I ever heard the word the Marcellus shale find in Pennsylvania and New York. Right. Usually, when we find energy, it's in places run by people that hate us. This is and far from population centers. This is right next to population centers. This is a big deal. And of course, the United States is a net exporter of energy today. And
that
the
person was correct. Yeah,
he was right on the money. Did not win his table. It was generally thought to be too outlandish. So I think, that's, if there's several themes that come out of this for me, is the best ideas rarely come from the senior person.
That's a good point.
There's a lot of borrowing across industries. This worked in that industry, and if you go back in time and look for these examples, Velcro was invented by a hunter who saw plants prick burrs, I guess you call them, sticking to his dog. And he's like, why can't we make fabrics like this? So best ideas rarely come from the senior people in the room. They come from places you might not expect. There's a lot of borrowing across industries. And I love rooms where you are not the expert. Matter of fact, if I'm ever the expert in a room, there's a problem with a room.
That's definitely how I felt at the first non-obvious idea dinner. I was by far the least accomplished person in the room, so it was very humbling. But I remember a non-winner that day, to your point, not a winner, but this woman had this idea, I think it was like 8 years ago, where I first heard of the toy drones. And her idea was to take rescue supplies into hard-to-get mountainous regions when there's like an earthquake, using drones. And that seems so obvious now, but that was really an innovative idea back then. It didn't win the day. Maybe she didn't present it the best, or she wasn't the most popular person at the table. But that is a reality right now, her idea. And I think she went to work in that.
I am seeing the U.S. Coast Guard use this to get to drowning people. They can get a drone out overlooking the coast of the beach, off the beaches of Delaware, and they can drop an inflatable container that becomes a raft or something. And if they find somebody, and so there are a lot of.
Do you have a favorite idea that for years you thought, boy, someone should have done that? Something you heard at one of your dinners that never came to fruition.
It's hard to narrow down. No, it's hard to narrow down a lot. One that stopped me in my tracks 2 years ago from a friend of mine who won her table with the idea, which is science is going to prove God exists.
Mm, wow.
Holy crap! I mean, I'm not sure God wants to be proven that He exists. That's part of the magic of God, I think, but is faith. But if you get your mind around that, I mean, I don't know what the implications of that are. I
Right.
didn't even,
Do you
but
read
tell me,
Barry Weiss? Do you read Barry Weiss's The Free Press? You talk about information, and The Free Press is online. She's on Substack, but it's also its own like online newspaper. Last week, they had an article written by the chief of staff at Anthropic, a guest column, Finding God in Silicon Valley.
yes,
Similar
yes,
topic, and it really,
yes,
I read it twice. I don't read too many articles twice, so
yes.
same topic. Interesting.
I think it's and so I mean, and that's kind of the point, right? Is that we should be
Well, that's definitely how I felt at the first non-obvious idea dinner. I was by far the least accomplished person in the room, so
I'm
it was
not
very
sure that's
humbling.
true.
But I remember a non-winner that day, to your point,
Yeah.
not a winner, but this woman had this idea. I think it was like 8 years ago where I first heard of the toy drones. And her idea was to take rescue supplies into hard to get mountainous regions when there's like an earthquake using drones. And that seems so obvious now, but that was
Right.
really an innovative idea back then. It didn't win the day. Maybe she didn't present it the best, or she wasn't the most popular person at the table,
Yeah.
but that is a reality right now, her idea. And
And
I
you're
think she went to
I,
work in that.
I am seeing the U.S. Coast Guard use this to get to drowning people. They can get a drone out
Mm,
overlooking the coast of the beach, off the beaches of Delaware,
mm.
and they can drop an inflatable container that becomes a raft or something. And if they find somebody, and so there are a lot of
Do you have a favorite
factors.
idea that for years you thought, boy, someone should have done that? Something you heard at one of your dinners that never came to
It's hard
fruition?
to
Because I
narrow
have
down
one.
no, well, it's hard to narrow down a lot of. I mean, one that stopped me in my tracks 2 years ago from a friend of mine who won her table with the idea, which is science is going to prove God exists.
Mm, wow.
Holy crap! I mean, I'm not sure God wants to be proven that He exists. That's part of the magic of God, I think, but is faith. But if you get your mind around that, I mean, I don't know what the implications of that are. I
Right.
didn't even,
Do you
but
read
tell me,
Barry Weiss? Do you read Barry Weiss's The Free Press? You talk about information, and The Free Press is online. She's on Substack, but it's also its own like online newspaper. Last week, they had an article written by the chief of staff at Anthropic, a guest column, Finding God in Silicon Valley.
yes,
Similar
yes,
topic, and it really,
yes,
I read it twice. I don't read too many articles twice, so
yes.
same topic. Interesting.
I think it's and so I mean, and that's kind of the point, right? Is that we should be a life well lived is one where you hear good ideas every day,
Yeah,
some of which
exposing
stop you in your
yourself.
tracks.
Yeah, I like exposing myself to
Yep.
people and thoughts outside my own echo chamber. Like maybe my least favorite thing is echo chamber. We have a mutual friend, Dirk Jungi, and
Yes. Yeah.
Dirk went with me to Chamonix, France twice for an ideas conference.
Oh,
And this was put on by the former CEO of the Davos World Economic Forum.
okay. Klaus. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was, now I'm kind of sharing a little bit about me that I normally don't do on the show, but I was like one of the rare conservatives at this
Yeah.
conference. But I loved being exposed to like really
Yep.
sharp thinkers from a different walk of life.
Yep.
Sometimes it
Yep.
helped me to like reevaluate my own views. Why do I feel a certain way about something? Sometimes it hardened my views, but it made me
Yeah.
really perfect my point, whatever it was. So I like being exposed to different
I,
ideas. Can I tell you my
please.
idea that I
Please.
thought should have come a reality? For 3 different non-obvious idea dinners, I had the concept of, I think election day in the United States should be the day after tax day. It should be April
Ooh.
16th.
Ooh.
And people don't vote for this for some reason, Ben.
Yeah.
And I
Yes.
think it's because maybe their political persuasion might be different. But
Yeah.
you're, as a customer, you're evaluating the day before, what am I paying for with my
Yeah.
tax dollars? And then you go vote the next day. Isn't that a good idea?
I love it. I love
Can
it.
you make that happen? If anyone can make it happen, it would be Ben duPont.
I don't know. I don't know that I can make that happen, but it's pretty damn interesting, and I love it. And your next time you're around a group of Europeans, there is a fascinating. I'll see if I can send it to you. Analysis from an economist at MIT named Andrew McAfee,
Hmm.
and you can follow him on Twitter. But he ran an interesting analysis. He created a bubble chart of companies that fit three criteria. They were homegrown from scratch. So these are not spin outs and things, homegrown from scratch. They were less than 50 years old, and they were more than 10 billion market cap. So
Mm.
this is a measurement of an economy's recent success stories.
Mm-hmm.
When you run that analysis through the United States, you get an eye chart of bubbles. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of bubbles. Now, the bigger ones are NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, Facebook that you'd expect, but there are a jillion small ones.
Mm-hmm.
If you run that analysis of Europe, you get a dozen companies, all small.
Mm. Mm.
Matter of fact, if you add all those companies together, they fit inside the market cap of Costco.
Wow.
That's Europe's 50-year success story is the market cap of Costco. Europe has got some real systemic problems, largely, I think, generated from government overreach and regulation that have not encouraged entrepreneurs to build great businesses. You know, they keep telling me, "Oh, we want a Google. We want a Google in Europe. We want a Facebook in Europe. We want an NVIDIA in Europe." You're never going to get those things in Europe because the environment is too crazy to start a company.
Yeah,
So
America continues to be like the best place to pursue new ideas.
Yes. Where does the capital want to go? Where there's a robust ecosystem? Where do the entrepreneurs want to go? Where there's a robust ecosystem with proven track records and success. My gosh.
You're right.
I mean, our country was a magnet for entrepreneurs to, a matter of fact, I have an op-ed coming out on a little bit about my family coming to America 225 years ago. And they came here, they were persecuted in France, put in prison, and they got out and came to the New World. So they came to the world really with two. One is to get away from the storming of the Bastille in France, but the other was this was a land of hope and opportunity. And 225 years later, we are still the land of hope and opportunity. That's an awesome thing and an awesome responsibility for our country. Anyway, I'm taking you way off topic here, but
no, this is a great topic. I love just hearing you mentally meander a little bit with some of these ideas. I mean, I'm following your lead of being curious. And one of the things I was curious about, Ben, was you mentioned your family just now.
Yeah.
Most people can't relate to being born into a famous family, but a lot of people can relate to living up to the expectations of parents and family.
Right.
A lot of, sons have their parents telling them that they should be doctors if they're doctors, or engineers, or be a lawyer like me, son.
Yes.
How did you have the courage to move beyond any of those? Well, my last name's duPont. I should stay in the family business. Expectations or pressures. Can you talk about that a little bit? Sure. Thinking about like the small town listener whose family has a restaurant, but maybe the listener of this show doesn't want to be in the family business.
Right. It's a good question, and I don't know what the right answer is or the right advice to that person other than.
But you could share your experience at least.
Sure. I mean, I grew up in a very driven home. My father was a very successful congressman, governor, ran for president briefly in 1988. And the reason people, he brought the banking industry. He came into Delaware that was at a 19% income tax rate and lowered it to essentially what became 6%. I can't imagine a state with a 19% income tax. I'm not aware of any state that's even close to that. Well, I guess you've got 13% in maybe New York and Hawaii and places like that. But So I grew up in a household that was very driven. My mother, when I'm one of four, she went back to college. It was not uncommon that young women would drop out of college and have kids.
Right.
My mother did. She went back to college when I was about 10, and then went to law school, and was a lawyer for a brief period, and then joined the Reagan administration. She was actually head of USAID. So my formative years, where my father was governor, my mom was head of USAID, and the role models for me were people that were driven, curious, and wanted to make the world a better place. And I don't know, you can tell your kids to do things, or you can show them, and I think showing them is a much more effective way to maybe share values. So I grew up in my father's father, who, I was the 8th generation employee of the DuPont company. I was super grateful to get the job. I mean, there were funny stories along the way, but
at that point early on, do you think you were thinking this is going to be a career in the family business, or did you know that I'm only going to do this for a little while?
No, I thought it might be a career. I mean, I was in awe of what they had built. But I am a disciple of Jim Collins, who wrote Good to Great.
Yeah.
And I actually got to meet him a few times, and he talks a lot about the flywheel of innovation of a company.
For sure.
It's a long time to get started, and then it coasts for a while, and it's you don't know when it's slowing down. And DuPont started in the 70s and maybe 80s to start to be a bureaucracy. And there are a lot of little telltale signs that I, at the time, was not curious enough to know. For instance, when I grew up in DuPont, it had 26 corporate jets.
Wow.
Yeah. Who does that? I understand 2. One.
Right.
But not 26, and a helicopter. The bureaucracy started, the flywheel of innovation started to slow down. I mean, they went through, and so I got a little frustrated with it. And the other problem that large companies have is they tend to be more tenure based. And you look at this and go, geez, I remember meeting people who go, Ben, I just have 4 years, 9 months, and 8 days, and I get X. I mean, I'm like, I do not want to go through life thinking about how much more time I have to do something maybe I don't like doing. Maybe the problem is find something that lights your fire and go change the world. And so
can you remember how long that period was where you were beginning to think maybe a life beyond?
Yeah, I mean, and ideas happen by accident. I mean, I was in the Lycra business, which was a super interesting business at the time. One of the few great businesses for single young men in the chemical industry, I might add.
Yoga pants.
Yes, exactly. And I certainly, I mean, look, I was grateful for every minute there. But I was just curious, and I came up with the idea of essentially an eBay for corporate research, which is what Yet2 was. And I convinced my management team that technically it was their IP. I was working for them when I came up with it. And I said, this really is not going to work unless you spin it out. Nobody's going to trust an eBay for research if one company owns it. And it needs to be. And so we spun it out, and I got $2 million of investment each from Siemens and Bayer in Europe, Caterpillar, Honeywell, Procter & Gamble, and DuPont in the U.S., and NTT in Japan. 7 Fortune 50
corporate
companies.
capital partners.
We have the best. In those days, we had the best corporate network, and I think that's true even today. Is we've got the best corporate network.
I didn't realize that was really that's how you started it.
That's how we. My boss actually said to me, if you find 6 DuPont peers to sign exclusive agreements with you, we will put in $2 million and split it with you 50-50. And I found like 100 DuPont peers to sign exclusive agreements with us. And I didn't realize that I essentially was just leaving DuPont at the time, but that's how it worked. And it couldn't have been more exciting. And I think that every young person should work at startups. I mean, I think it's
sure.
It's the most interesting and the hardest I have ever worked.
And it sounds like, I can tell by your enthusiasm, you're so glad you made that decision. So you're not now looking at your calendar to say, I'm going to hit 40 years soon at DuPont, and they're going to give me a watch. And Maybe I'll get to see one of the 26 planes. I'm sure they don't have 26 anymore, but you get my
No, I think
point.
they have one.
What a good what a good decision you made for yourself. Do you think much about any whys in the road? This was one of them. This was a moment where you could have like turned left or turned right, and you have free will. I believe in God's plan, but also God gives us free will to make our own decisions.
Yeah.
Was there ever any whys in the road that you do think now?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, that was certainly one of them. I think there are many. Look, I think we all have different fear tolerances, but I think every one of us should be pushing ourselves enough that we're afraid once in a while. If you're not a little bit afraid of like,
little uncomfortable, right?
A little uncomfortable. You need to put yourself in rooms where you're a little uncomfortable. You mentioned what you're learning from other political viewpoints.
Right.
You need to be a little uncomfortable in rooms. You need to be in rooms. I mean, one of the things I like the most that I started doing now, about once a year, I go to a trade show I know nothing about.
Smart.
I went into the Javits Center to a plumbing trade show. By the way, mind-boggling trade show, and all of the new innovation coming along in the plumbing industry, and it was like, mind expanding. I think people ought to be in that environment, and they ought to be afraid a little bit. And when forks in the road, I mean, what's the famous quote? Take the one less traveled. But, I think you ought to make decisions once in a while that scare you. And they're easy. It's easier to make scary decisions when you're younger and you don't have a mortgage. And
That's true. Right. Kids with responsibility. I like how you went to the Javits Center for a plumbing conference. I don't host non-obvious idea dinners, but I host a lot of like dinner events. I have a peer group of CEOs, and they always want me to ask some kind of probing question that when I ask it, they look uncomfortable, their eyes roll, but then they love the sharing and it bonds all of us closer. So the question I asked recently to this group was, and it gets to what you just said, I asked the group, when's the last time you did something for the first time? Because most of us 50 and up, we kind of get set in our ways for better or for worse. So you went to this plumbing conference, so that would have been an applicable example of doing something for the first time. Yes. But it really got people thinking about, boy, I need to try something new. I need to disrupt a little bit, whether it's physical activity or a trip or professionally. Do you think about the future, like something you still want to do that you haven't done yet? I mentioned how you're a pilot and you're a ham radio enthusiast.
There are more things I want to go do. I'm trying to squeeze it all in. I want to live a long time so that I can.
Speaking of that, what are you doing to take care of yourself? I know you have exposure to some really sharp health thinkers. But
I try.
Are you doing like a physical fitness regimen? Are you eating a certain way?
I should be doing more. You
have spectacular hair. Your hair is doing great.
It's still in. It's still in. That's a win.
Don't trigger me.
I try to run 4 days a week. You can't tell by looking at me, but I think running is, there's a lot of written about the adrenal gland system in our bodies. It's the corollary to blood vessels, but it doesn't have the heart pumping. And what pumps the adrenal gland system essentially is hairs on the inside of the vessels that get liquids to move. So you need to bounce. Whatever exercise you do, you need to move up and down a little bit. That gets your adrenal gland system energized. And but I should do more. I try to exercise in the morning and try to exercise while listening to something interesting. I do have a thesis that we're all listening to way too much news. And most news is news about news, or even worse, news about news about news. In other words, the politician says something crazy, 10 talking heads opine, one says something even crazier. That's now the news story. I don't need to hear all that. I want to hear what
the tweet about said. The tweet, right?
Exactly. And I'll determine if it's crazy or not. And so, if I'm running in the mornings, listening to something interesting, that's a net win.
How do you curate your news though? Actually, your current events. Are you reading Substack articles journalists write? Or are you still I still get the print edition of the Wall Street Journal, but how do you How do you consume whatever current event news you do consume?
It's a good question, and I'll probably give you a crap. It's a question I ask of smart people all the time, and I'm not a, and so my answer is going to be less smart because I'm not up to their standard.
Come on.
But I'm always interested in hearing. You listen to somebody really smart, and like, what are your news sources? What are your data sources? Where do you find information?
This is what I'm asking you, Ben. You're in this conversation.
If you're a young person, you should be asking that to people you admire. In my case, I Wall Street Journal, New York Times. I started subscribing a few years ago to the Financial Times, and I actually find it one of the best papers. So I read those three typically in the Delaware newspaper, which takes about 8 seconds to read.
Right.
And so those are some of the
so newspapers is still. And do you do anything else like aggregators of news on sites or, like I said, Substack?
Apple, and I'm getting more from Twitter than I thought I would get. And I think Twitter's improved over the past few years.
Definitely.
And you can follow, there's a lot of smart people that have interesting analysis.
You can choose to follow them, right?
Right. And you can just follow them. It's free. And it's it's great. I listen to The Economist, which I think is generally nonpartisan, although they occasionally sneak things in there. And then I'm a big fan, obviously, the All In podcast, I think is pretty interesting. I'm a big fan of the guys at Acquired. I don't know if you ever listened to that podcast series, but it's excellent. It's deep dives on how companies like Rolex and Porsche and were founded. And I think those founding stories are absolutely fascinating. So I guess that's my answer. I wish I had.
No, that's a good answer. It's very interesting. Like the podcast medium, I just love the long form conversation. It's not just because we're doing it right now, but as a consumer of it, I just really enjoy that uninterrupted, deep conversation, which until they came along was pretty rare to find in the age of Twitter. So I think that's a real positive. Well, I asked a question and then I interrupted you, but what are you most excited about in the future? Before we wrap up today, what are you looking forward to doing? What do you want to be up to if we talk again in a year? Or what are you thinking about looking ahead?
So there's some things I'm super excited about and things I'm still not happy with, societal questions and that maybe that's the shorter of the list. So I'll start there. What I'm unhappy with, we still have way too many homeless, and most of it's a drug addiction problem, I think. We have people that for whatever reason kind of drop out of society, and that's not a great thing. I think some of that's driven by lack of job opportunities, and we got to fix that. Some of it's driven by crappy education systems, and we got to fix that. So those are some of the things that worry me.
Concern you.
But I'm generally much more optimistic than I am pessimistic. I think, and it'd be interesting to go have someone do this analysis, but there are more smart people working on more tough societal problems than any other time in history. And I'm super encouraged by that. It's not, there are hundreds of serious efforts curing diseases and cancers and things. It's not like we need all of them to be successful. We need one or two, and so that gives me great hope. When you line up skills and expertise to societal problems, big deal. When you decrease friction in things, which of course, the internet did 25 years ago, and now AI is doing even more. I think there are huge bounces in productivity. I think you're going to see them faster. My favorite, I'm trying to remember who was the head of the Fed when computers started to become ubiquitous. Maybe
Greenspan,
maybe Greenspan.
Yeah.
And he had a great quote, which is, I see computers everywhere, but in the productivity numbers. Meaning it took a long time
before
for
its
people
time,
to figure
right.
out how to figure out how to use computers so that they did improve productivity. I think the time it is taking for technologies to be applicable to humanity is shorter. And I think you're already seeing AI be applicable. I don't think the big job apocalypse people are talking about is coming. I don't think you're going to see the SaaS apocalypse, which people are talking about. I don't think either of those things are accurate fears.
I'm with you on both of those, yes.
I find the world so damn interesting. That's one of the things that you and I are a little bit both in the investment business and being around entrepreneurs that have unique worldviews is an extra wonderful thing.
Well, I think you are a unique human being, and I cannot believe how quickly the time goes. I feel like we could have our own show and go on and on and on. But
Anytime.
for now, oh, that's awesome. Thank you for giving me your time today. It's very valuable. And I do hope we can connect again soon in Palo Alto
I look
or at a
forward to it.
coffee shop or anywhere.
I hope we don't wait till the next fortuitous meeting at the University Cafe in Palo Alto. So
We'll make it happen.
Adam, great to reconnect. Wonderful conversation. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you for listening to the Up To podcast. We aim to showcase super achievers who remain humble in the hope that their stories will inspire others to remain humble throughout life's journey. For feedback, guest suggestions, or any other inquiries, you can email Adam Kaufman directly at adam@up2foundation.org. That's adam@up2foundation.org. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Up To wherever you get your favorite podcast. BLC Digital Strategies proudly produces the Up To podcast, located right outside the nation's capital in McLean, Virginia. Visit blcdigitalstrat.com for all of your podcasting needs. We'll see you next time.